Story 1. I had an ex who I thought was totally normal until the first time I was with her in front of her grandparents. She was so rude and then told me afterward that she feels like the elderly are a waste and a drain on families and society. It didn't last long after that. Story 2. My ex told me if I ever got a cat, he would do his best to run it over with his car because he hates cats. That was after I told him I loved cats and wanted to go volunteer in a shelter. Story 3. I deserve to be cheated on. This was after we had a very long and very in-depth conversation regarding my concerns about how close they were growing with my best friend at the time. Story 4. My ex once casually mentioned that they don't believe in apologizing because they never do anything wrong. That one sentence changed everything. I realized I'd never get accountability or real empathy from them. Story 5. My ex once told me that he hoped my father would die so I could see what it's like when things aren't handed to you on a silver platter. He said it was easier for me because my dad worked abroad, and apparently that meant I had some sort of special advantage in life. I left him after that. Story 6. My ex once confided in me that she felt incredibly insecure about her intelligence. Even though she is one of the smartest people I know, it was a total mind-bender. I had always admired her quick wit and sharp mind, but never realized she felt that way about herself. It made me see her in a whole new light, and I gained a deep respect for her vulnerability. Story 7. My ex was feeling under the weather and was telling me he needed to get over-the-counter medication and he had no idea what to get. I was a nurse and recommended something, including how and when he should take it. He scoffed. "You're a nurse, a doctor's assistant. You're not even a pharmacist." I realized he didn't respect me or nurses at all. We broke up a month after. Story 8. He seemed sorry enough. It was when I was assaulted by someone and in my panic I left my keys there. I was too afraid to get them back, so my ex had to meet the guy who assaulted me to get the keys back. My ex said he seemed sorry enough after the meeting. My ex for almost a month made me re-explain what happened nonstop. Eventually, he flat out said he didn't believe me. His mom was a police officer. She also blamed me. Eventually, I ended up meeting someone randomly, and in my forget the world downward spiral, I told this stranger what happened to me. He told me I didn't deserve it, hugged me, and apologized. If a stranger can show more kindness than someone who says they love me, what is wrong? I broke up with my ex that night. Story 9. During a disagreement, my ex-husband told me that I'm too emotional and he's just the opposite of me. He went on to explain how unemotional he is. His example was that if we had a child and if the child died, he still wouldn't be emotional. Story 10. On a positive note, my partner was able to be vulnerable with me about some seriously bad stuff that had happened to them. My respect for him reached a newfound level because of how he has tried to handle his life after these events. I'm so proud of him. Story 11. I was on my period and it really hurt. This man told me I am overreacting, lazy, and just avoiding my duties. I called my sister. She picked me up and I never went back to his place. We had dated for 3 months, and that was the first time I got my period at his place. Story 12. For me, I guess it's more confirmed than changed. My husband and I were at an amusement park recently with friends and their 8-year-old daughter who had gone through cancer treatment. She got on a daring ride that did loops, and they told her she had to get off even if she took off her prosthetic. She just looked at her parents and said, "Does this mean I can never go on upside-down rides?" They were distracted and didn't quite hear her or know what to do. My husband said, "Forget this. I'm not going to let her think that. Time to be a concerned advocate." He looked up the Americans with Disabilities Act and safety regulations on his phone, talked to every manager at the park, and then, even though he gets extremely motion sick, rode the ride with her after they agreed it actually was safe for her to do it. It was the most impressive thing I have ever seen a person do. Story 13. He confided he was a product of what would be considered statutory rape now. His mother abused him physically and emotionally. Later, she abused his step-siblings as well. She was a social chameleon, very charming and gracious until the public doors were shut. He had aunts and grandparents who loved him and mitigated as they could. He realized why order and routine are important to him, and why he noticed even slight fluctuations in my mood. This gave me insight into why he works to always be calm but also remains distant from most situations and has distrust of people. Story 14. I started dating my boyfriend 4 months ago, but it got pretty serious pretty fast. I am traveling across the country to see my family for the holidays and have mentioned how much I would love for him to join us. He just celebrates with friends, so I didn't think it would be a huge deal for him to miss a year. He dodged the question the first time it came up but told me last week, "I really want to, but if I go with you for Thanksgiving, Steve won't have anyone to celebrate with." Steve is his 70-year-old coworker. My boyfriend has had him over for Thanksgiving for the last 7 years because he doesn't have family to spend it with, and he cannot bear the thought of leaving him here to celebrate alone. I have always admired my boyfriend's commitment to the village he has made for himself, but that conversation really put it into perspective for me. I have a feeling he won't be coming to my family's Thanksgiving for as long as Steve is around, and honestly, I love and admire him so much for it. He is such an incredible person. Story 15. My ex once acknowledged that they never expected to find someone who accepted them for who they are. That changed my perspective on them. It brought us closer together and taught me the value of kindness. Story 16. Either boundaries are made to be broken or women are so easy to manipulate, said while drunk, or the real brain twister. I can't promise to be faithful. I'll tell you first. I've been gone now a few years. It's been an adventure dissecting different statements as normal versus not normal. Story 17. My beloved dog passed away after a year of me caring for him through kidney disease and cancer. I did everything I could to keep him feeling as well as possible in his last months, and keep him doing his favorite things. I would push all 80 pounds of him in a wagon to the park just so he could lie in the sun. I rearranged my job so I could work from home and got overlooked for a promotion because of this. His illness and passing were truly traumatic for me. After he passed away, my husband said, "The dog passing showed me your true colors in how selfish you are." At that moment, I knew he would never have my back through anything. Story 18. Before we got married, my mother-in-law was making oblique comments about changing my last name to my husband's. We had talked about it, and I was leaning towards keeping my maiden name due to sheer laziness. His parents are pushy and can be weird about this sort of thing, so the prodding was getting annoying and my husband noticed. He told his mom, "I fell in love with first name maiden name. I don't have any idea who first name his last name is. I'm marrying the woman I fell in love with. When I tell you that I swooned, I wasn't expecting a declaration, and it was so validating, supportive, and just generally gave me this overwhelming feeling of, damn, I loved this guy before, but he sees me. It made me feel like a partner, an equal, like my agency was the most important thing to him and that he would actively protect and advocate for it in the marriage. From then on, I had strong feelings about keeping my name and even stronger feelings for him. It was a small thing, but hearing how he considered me in that moment was the most attractive thing he's ever done. He's lived up to that standard since. It's also been an inspiration for me to meet him at that high bar as well. Story 19. Well, after he drank too much again and was late to work again, and pitched a tantrum because it was all my fault apparently, then said if he gets fired he would call my boss and get me fired. Yup, that was it. Never talked to him again after I shuffled him out of my house. Only bad boyfriend I ever had. But he was a doozy. Story 20. An old ex got unreasonably upset with me when I was late coming over after work because I helped a female coworker put her spare tire on. We were the only people there, and she didn't know how. She otherwise would have been stranded. When I saw that lack of empathy for another person, I was out of there. Story 21. I once had an ex come to me in the middle of the night saying she wanted to run away with me. Everything she did was monitored by her family, so to appear out of nowhere was a huge surprise by itself. She was first-generation Indian, and her family was horrible and typically horrible to women. During that time, I realized how vulnerable she was and how much she loved and needed me in ways that no relationship should hopefully ever have to experience. I couldn't have ever conceived in my wildest dreams as a random white boy growing up in the Pacific Northwest. This was literally, I have no future with my family, and I am a commodity to my family and will never be happy, and you're the only thing I can imagine being happy with or having a real future in the most literal sense. The next day, her uncle came to my parents' door. They didn't know where I lived, so probably a tracking app or something similar. She was taken away and sent to India after they realized she was in a relationship with a white boy, that they hadn't first approved of. That changed my whole look on Indian culture for the worst. But going from, I love you and we are partners, to, I would leave my family and give up everything I know for you, because you are the only real safety and love and respect in my life. No person should feel like that, ever. 99% for her, but that 1% for me broke me for a long time. Quick edit. She's happier now. Came back and got married to a good guy. Another edit. Her parents found out we were dating and sent her back to India for months. I bought her a phone to keep in contact, but they found it, and a charm bracelet to remember all our best memories. I'd send her a bedtime story or a few paragraphs of love and affirmation every few days. When we got back, we tried, but she was changed and defeated and broke up. Story 22. My soon-to-be ex-husband has said a lot of things that made me change how I see him, but I think the one that really did it was when he told me, I don't love you, I only married you for your passport and I want a divorce. He was drunk and, to this day, claims he just wanted to be nasty and didn't mean it, but that's a line you don't cross. Story 23. My ex told me that the dinosaur bones were placed by God as a test of faith, and there was nothing I could say that would convince him otherwise. Then I realized that any potential children I had with him would likely be taught this by their father. Story 24. My ex-partner said that I was too emotional to be around after I found out he dropped my elderly dog off at the veterinarian and told them the dog was abandoned, resulting in the dog being put down. He said my energy was chaotic after he manipulated me into leaving my house with my children so he could move back in with his new girlfriend 2 months after we split. There were a lot of red flags during the decade we were together, but he truly showed all his colors when we separated. Story 25. The moment she dismissed my anxiety as just an excuse for being lazy, it was like a switch flipped in my brain. I had been dealing with panic attacks and struggling to explain what life with anxiety really felt like. Then she just reduced it all to laziness. That's when I knew she would never understand the battles I fight inside my own head. It wasn't just unsupportive. It was invalidating my entire experience. Trust me, I wasn't looking for sympathy, just a little empathy. It was a sobering reminder that not everyone can walk a mile in another's shoes, nor even take a single step, and that was a deal breaker for me. Story 26. He said, sometimes women make men rape them. I had to leave that relationship. He sounded like a potential assaulter. I don't know if I overreacted, but I just couldn't with him. Story 27. My ex was abusive, to be blunt, but I was young enough to be groomed when it started, so I spent most of the relationship believing I deserved it. She got very comfortable saying whatever she felt like to me because she knew I would just take it. And one day, after I gave her some art I had done for her, she snapped, I don't care. You will never be as good as the people I know, so stop trying. And it just kind of clicked in a way her other words did not. It finally sank in that she did not care, and no matter what I did, I would never be good enough for her. It was not worth trying. My current partner, however, my mom died a month after we started dating. He was states away when it happened. The second I told him, he came back and spent the next month making sure I got out of bed. He cooked and helped me clean and even celebrated Christmas with me despite the fact he is Jewish. I had no idea why he would do this for me after only dating a month. And when I asked, he just said, why wouldn't I? Prior to that, despite liking him fine, he had always seemed kind of abrasive, and so I had him at arm's length. The second he revealed that dropping everything to help me was just common sense, I realized that he was a really good guy who was just gruff and a bit rough around the edges. Turns out it is mostly just because he is neurodivergent and very literal and matter-of-fact, but he is genuinely one of the kindest and most thoughtful people I have ever met. Glad to call him husband now. Story 28. When my ex-wife said, money that's just sitting in the bank not being spent is being wasted, I knew we weren't going to grow old together. She meant going to the nearest store and buying whatever caught her eye, whether she actually wanted it or not. Whether she was depressed, wanted to celebrate something, or anything in between, she would say, let's spend money. She was the extreme opposite of my mom, who seemed to have an actual phobia of spending money. Story 29. He said to me, "I love that you don't need me to feel entire." This impacted me hard since it was the first time I felt understood and supported in my independence. Story 30. We were 19 and had been together 5.5 years. He was going to Los Angeles with his band to meet with a contact they had made. We're not in the United States. I was understandably devastated. He replied, "Like I'd give up this opportunity for a petty little relationship." They lasted 5 weeks before they came back and the band broke up.